Hello, friends. Welcome to the Angels and Awakening podcast. I'm your host, Julie Jancis. Today, we have a very special episode of the podcast where we are talking to two people who are from Australia, who live in Australia, who are really giving us a good idea of what is going on over there firsthand from on the ground so that we understand as we are praying for Australia. Because my friends, let me tell you, this isn't a one and done thing. This isn't it's in the news for a week and then we can forget about it type of thing. Australia's dry season lasts through March. So this is not a story that's going away. This is a story that we need to keep on the forefront of our minds, of our hearts. We need to keep Australia, its people, its animals, its land in our thoughts and prayers for the next few months as they continue to battle these fires. Tomorrow, Friday, January 17th at 1:11 p.m. Central Time, we are going to be over live on the Facebook tribe group called the Angels and Awakening Podcast Tribe. If you're not part of that group already, you'll want to get signed up because over there, we are a wonderful supportive community for you, talking about all different sorts of things. And that is where I will go live on Friday at 1:11 p.m. Central Time in order to do a prayer with you live for Australia. Before we begin, I just want to let you know that on Monday, we have Karina Virginia. She is an author. She is also a YouTube star who has done several videos on all sorts of spiritual topics. She has a Kundalini meditation for removing fear. She has different meditations for healings and miracles. Lots of great stuff over there for you to check out on her YouTube video. But she will be here on Monday with a podcast interview that we recorded earlier this fall. The following week, we're going to have another special guest on. This is a kiddo who actually has the very special gift of seeing spirit on the other side. We're talking to him because, my friends, I can't tell you the number of people who write into the show who say that their kids see spirit and listen to the podcast because they want to feel that they are not alone. And my friends, if you know a child like that, please ensure them that they are not alone. And the following Monday's episode would be a great one for them to listen to so that they can hear one child and mother's story of what this looks like in their lives. So this first story about Australia and what's happening comes to you from a woman named Diane. Her and her husband live separately from her daughter who has a family in the same town, and both her husband, and her daughter and their family were all evacuated from their small town of Kooragang in Australia. So I tried to Zoom with her and to record the interview, but it did not work. So I am going to read to you my notes from my conversation with her. Now, when I was talking to Diane, she said that there are over 100 fires burning currently. She said that 15.6 million acres has been burned down. And if you want to compare that to land you might know of, that is about the size of Arizona, the entire state of Arizona. That is how much land has been burnt down. And what Diane said that the state is doing or the country is doing is they call it making fire breaks. So they said the Army brought up to their area a lot of equipment to make these fire breaks. And what these fire breaks are is they're taking bulldozers and going through where they think the fire is going ahead of it so that they're making clean breaks in the land. And those clean breaks are to try and stop the fires from going further. However, she said what's happening is that a lot of ambers are popping up from the fires and that those ambers can travel up to 6 kilometers. which for those in the U.S. comes out to about 3.72 miles. So an amber popping up in the air from fire can travel that 3.72 miles, which is sometimes jumping these fire breaks that they are trying to make, which is why it's so hard to try and contain these fires. And I asked specifically for Diane to let us know if there's anything that we can really pray for. And she said, out of everything that she's heard, one of the biggest things that breaks her heart are the firefighters who are spending just all their time and energy in fighting these fires right now. And a lot of them to come home and find out that their home has been burnt down. So if we can just send a special prayer right now out to all of these firefighters who have been fighting these fires for months and who are going to continue to be fighting these fires for months, that God keeps special protection over them, over their families, and over their homes, their animals as well. I asked Diane if just firefighters and people from the Army are really stepping in here, or if people are volunteering to fight the fires. And she said, you really can't volunteer because you have to be trained. She said, but they are seeing some of the firefighters' children who know how to work the hoses going along with their parents who are fighting those fires to help in that way to work the hoses. But she also said the Army is really stepping in a lot as well. So again, Diane lives in a town called Corryong in Victoria in Australia, and both she and her husband were evacuated, and then a while later her daughter and her daughter's family was evacuated as well. But just to give you an idea of what it's like to be evacuated, Diane was evacuated with her husband in a convoy. And she said what happens, and this is the story that she told me for her daughter, that the daughter knew around New Year's that they needed to pay attention to where the fire was because it was approaching their area. And there's an emergency app over there where the app is going to alert you when you need to leave. And when you need to leave and this app goes off, you go to an evacuation center. And for her daughter, this was at the high school. So she said it was about 3 a.m. when this app went off, and her family, her daughter's two sons went to the high school. Her husband did not go with her because he was fighting. He's a volunteer firefighter who was fighting to save a power station. Diane said if that power station would have to gone out in the fire, half of Victoria, about the size of England, just mind you, would have lost power. So her husband stayed back, which was a little scary for them and nerve-wracking to really fight this to save the power station. But she took her children, went to the high school. And when things got worse, Diane says a convoy of just different government vehicles and fire vehicles take people from the high school out. And she said they had about a 2-hour drive down through hills. There were some fires going as they went through. But in the end, when Diane herself was evacuated by convoy, they were first taken to a motel where they stayed for a week. And then after that, they were taken to Army barracks that were open up. And she said everybody is just treating one another with so much kindness, and there is so much love. And she felt that they were treated with so much respect. But for those 2 weeks while they were evacuated, because all of the roads were shut down and nobody was allowed back into her town, they didn't have any knowledge, no one did, of whether or not their house was still standing or would be standing when they got home. Diane considers her and her family to be so incredibly blessed because when they did return, they found that not only was Diane and her husband's home safe, Also, her daughter and their family's home was safe as well. So they feel so blessed and so fortunate because she said, Julie, I just can't tell you the number of people who have lost their homes. And she just felt she was so blessed to be able to have all of her memories, have all of her keepsakes still with her. So our prayers go out to all of those who have lost their homes. Diane wanted us to say a special prayer too for all of the volunteers who have been coming out from different areas to build fences. They're building these fences ahead of where the fires are so that they are trying to get animals to stay away from the fire sites. She said this has just been a miraculous angelic effort in and of itself to come in so quickly and to be able to build these fences for the animals' safety. There have also been semi-truck trailers that have been bringing hay from across the country for cattle. But she says it looks, when you're going into some of these towns that were beautiful towns and filled with life, it looks in some of these areas like a bomb has just hit. And as you'll hear in the next interview, Australia knows that they're going to rebuild. Australia knows that there is going to be a rebirth, but there is a feeling of energy of just being tired, that they have been fighting for so long, that there is so much devastation, and they still have, again, my friends, they still have until March where they are in this dry season. This next interview that you're going to hear is with a woman named Tony, who is from Sydney, Australia, and she has more to tell us about what they're seeing on the ground and how we can pray more for Australia, how we can keep them in our hearts, thoughts, and minds. Hello, everyone. I am here with Tony. She is a podcast listener. She's part of our tribe. She is part of this podcast community, and she lives over in Sydney, Australia. It is night over there, about 10 p.m. her time, and it's about 5 a.m. our time over here in Chicago. And I'm just having Tony on because it is really one thing to read about things in the newspaper going on with these fires, but it is a completely another thing to be there firsthand and to see what is going on. So, Tony, I'd like for you to kind of talk to us about this.
Thank you so much. It's a real privilege to be able to be a part of this. It's incredibly scary what is happening in our country at the moment. These fires, some of them have been burning since September, and our country is, we're well versed with fire. We have a fire season every summer, but we've never seen anything like this. Just for example, where I live, I'm about an hour and a half southwest of Sydney, and 10 kilometres, which is about 8 miles, I think. To the north is a fire that's burning, that's over 280,000 hectares. And less than 30 miles south is another fire that's over 300,000 hectares. So they are absolutely, the size of them is just unfathomable. I have a friend that lives 3.5 hours drive from me, and we're under the threat of the same fire. That's how big they are. And they do say that they probably will merge because the weather that we're having yesterday was, I had a little look at the conversions. Yesterday was 55 mile an hour winds and over 110 Fahrenheit. And then, but then today was a reprieve, and the firefighters were able to get a little bit more containment. So it's very scary. There's a lot of video footage. Someone put a GoPro on their veranda when the fire came through, and people say that you could hear it coming like 10, 20 minutes before it actually hit, it just roars like a freight train and moves incredibly fast. It's just like something Steven Spielberg could create on a screen, but like nothing you could even imagine. And it just wipes everything out in its path. So yeah, it's been very, very devastating for many communities. So many people have lost their homes. We've had about over 20 deaths now. Some of them have been volunteer firefighters, and we've lost 500 million animals and wildlife. So it's utterly devastating.
I heard some reports were saying that it was up to, they believe, 30% of koalas. 30%.
Yeah. There's, they were already under threat anyway, with different illnesses and loss of their natural habitat. So for the koala population, it truly has been spectacularly devastating. All the vets and the wildlife people are, they're pushed for resources. Everybody's working overtime to try and save these animals, and they've had to euthanize a lot of animals, cattle as well, and horses, and and all our beautiful little wildlife friends.
Yeah. So I want to go back to a couple of things. You said that this is going on since September, and it's not like just one or two rainfalls is going to put this out, right? I mean, this is, I think some of us reading the news around the world are thinking, well, let's pray for rain, and let's pray for just a little bit of rain, and this is going to put those fires out. But that's not what's happening. What is it going to physically take, are they saying over there, to change this? And we've never seen it at this magnitude, correct? I mean, we've had fires in Australia before, but never like this.
Yeah, this is unprecedented here or anywhere in the world, I believe. It's a really good question, and I wish we knew the answer to that. But what is going to help is, what we need is continual rain, lots of it. But there's none forecast no reasonable rain until March. We have been in drought for many years. So what is helping this country at the moment is more resources, money, getting our government together to be more proactive in the right ways. Like we're leasing firefighting planes from different countries, right down to the grassroots. Like our firefighters need more resources. Most of them are volunteers, and they're exhausted. So other countries have been sending, the US and Canada have sent firefighters. New Zealand has sent several batches of firefighters over. So it's just that support, and yes, months of rain.
Yeah. And I want to put on here too, I'm just looking it up real quick. I used to work for nonprofit organizations, and I'm very cautious about who I refer people to donate to, because I want them to be the best organizations. And I think that you can know that, Prince Harry and his wife Meghan are really researching who the right people are. And they posted on Instagram 3 different places that people can donate to in Australia: Red Cross Australia, RFS. Is that the government in Australia?
That's the state government, so that's the Rural Fire Service, and so the RFS is a very good one to donate to.
And the CFA as well?
Yeah, Country Fire Association, yeah.
Okay.
The other one I would put is Wires. I'm not sure if that's on the list, but that's the wildlife rescue people, so they need a lot of funding as well.
Yeah.
But they're all very, very good and legitimate charities.
Perfect.
Really appreciate any donation.
Let's do that. Let's put those links up in the show notes so that people can find those. And if you could send that one to me so that people have that place to donate to wildlife, I think that would be absolutely wonderful. I want to keep the podcast positive always, and we're talking about this so that we can come back to the prayer that we're going to do for Australia. But what I want to know too is, where are people's minds at in Australia, and what fear is there about if you have to go from now until March, so that while we're praying, we really understand what the true feeling is over there, and we can help transmute that vibe into hope?
I think because we have lived with bushfire as part of our lives here, but just never to this magnitude, most Australians do know that fire means regeneration and hope. But it is hard to hold that in your mind while this is all going on and when there is so much loss. So I think really Australians, held in their hearts that it's not going to be the end of the world. It's not going to be an apocalyptic, disaster, but it does feel a bit like that. So I think there is hope. The general feeling, this is, these are the circles that I move in. I think if you spoke to the farmers out west that haven't seen rain for so long, they would have a different answer. I'm not really entirely sure how to answer the question any more than that.
That's okay. I'm wondering too if you've talked to people, because I've got other friends too that live in Australia, and I haven't gotten to talk to them via phone yet, but just seeing their posts on Facebook that the fires are moving so quickly, like you said before, that there are some people who think that they're in safe areas, and then just in a moment they have to pick up and leave. I mean, what is happening with that, and what are you seeing? Are there any stories that you're seeing? I want to talk about that. And I also want to talk about the angels of this, who are really those firefighters that you're, and people who are out there rescuing wildlife and working with the wildlife, and their families, because their families, there's so many things in the world that we don't like to look at. We don't like to look at death. We don't like to talk about sometimes military families, firefighter families, who's really making huge sacrifices in this lifetime with their family members, putting their lives in danger to be on the front lines.
Yeah, I think it's very, very scary for all of them, for the firefighters themselves, that we have lost 3 firefighters, and some of the footage that's coming out of the insides of their trucks, these fires are just exploding. They're blowing the trucks over. It's so for their families. There have been quite a few interviews. They are really quite terrified because they just don't know if their partner is going to walk back in the door. They're coming home utterly exhausted, and putting down a little bit of food and getting a little bit of sleep and going out again, and they've been doing it day after day after day, week after week, and month after month. And and that they have the recognition from the community. But I guess it's a little bit like Russian roulette. They just don't know what they're going to face. I do have I had a friend staying with me, and her father was he was a contractor on big machinery, so he was out there moving the land around while they're trying to make a barrier to stop the fire that was coming, and the wind suddenly changed and it came towards them, and he had the foresight to think really quickly and dug a hole that he and 5 firefighters sheltered in, and the fire raged over them for 4 hours. And they, these men were crying. It was the end of their lives for them, and somehow they made it through. And it was only through that quick thinking that they survived. So there's incredible stories like this that are coming out. And in terms of people, not my own daughter was at her place, and she took some video footage of they're in a paddock, and there's about 2 acres, and then there's 50,000 hectares of bushland, and the flames are leaping up 60 odd feet in the air, and that's not even close, and so much of Australia has one road out on these properties, and it's like, I'm on the end of the phone going, get out, and you just, sometimes some people just don't have time. They think they're okay, but it's just moving quicker than like nothing before. So
I saw one report of a family that was celebrating on New Year's Eve and was close to a beach, and the fire came in so quickly that they just had to run out to the water because that was the only direction that they could go. Yeah.
There's some amazing footage of just particularly the South Coast, because that was New Year's Eve, that it just took everyone by surprise. And there's hundreds of cars and caravans and tents and kids and dogs and a couple of horses all on the beach, as the whole sky is just deep red and alive with it.
Wow.
It's crazy scenes. Yeah.
So their reports too are different based on the number of houses that this is in. Some report over 1,000. Are people, where do you go? Are people going to stay with relatives, with friends? Are people taking one another in? What is happening like that?
Yeah. Most people are going to relatives. Most people, a lot of people are evacuating beforehand. So we're advised, you make a choice early on. You have a plan. Your plan is either evacuate or stay and defend. The reports that come out have people who have stayed and defend have regretted it. The one, that it's absolutely terrifying. But the majority of people are either with relatives, with friends, or with evacuation centres, which are like public halls, schools, RSL clubs. I don't know if you have them in America, but big clubs basically, and that you can bring animals, and a lot of livestock are evacuated to showgrounds and big parks and that kind of thing. So there are communities that have basically up and moved and are very displaced at the moment. And I've been in Sydney for quite a few days. I've evacuated twice so far, and it's going to be bad again next weekend, so probably get out then as well.
What happens to life when you're evacuated? You can't go to work, and how is the society managing?
Well, it's funny, being in Sydney, the feeling is quite different. It does feel like it's a bit unreal. It's not really happening in comparison to where I live. It's very real, and I think a lot of people are in a holding pattern. It's like life is on pause while this is going on. People just can't go to work, and a lot of the firefighters, they're volunteers. They haven't been to work since this has been happening, so it's been a choice.
So then what happens with companies? Like, if you're not going to work, how do you get your paycheck?
Yeah, I don't know. I work for myself, so.
In that way? Yeah.
Pardon?
Is it just disrupting life in that way?
Most definitely, yeah, and it will for some time to come. Particularly with these, like entire towns were lost on the South Coast. So that's all the businesses, and the roads. There's been so many roads closed, so we've got problems with transport. Trains have had to stop because fire's been over the line. So in terms of getting supplies, getting our whole country relies on trucks, and so when freeways are closed, things come to a grinding halt. So I think it's still
supplies in different places.
Beg your pardon?
Is it because the roads aren't open? Is it hard to get supplies in different places?
Where I hear where the fires were on the south coast, like their entire huge supermarket there was nothing left on the shelves. People just, sort of went into panic mode and bought supplies, bought what they could. The fuel stations ran out of fuel. People were queuing for, hours and hours just to try and get some petrol or some gas. So yeah, they're stopping people coming into the area or going towards that area. So the freeways have been blocked for, quite a few hours beforehand, or hundreds of kilometres beforehand.
Wow.
So yeah, it's the nation is still carrying on, and business is happening, but in certain areas it's completely stopped altogether.
Yeah. Well, we are praying for you today, and we are so sorry for everything that is going on. Tony, do they say, one more question, that any of this is due to global warming, or is there any bigger cause that they're talking about?
Yeah, so there are a lot of people talking about climate change, absolutely, without a doubt, because our weather is very erratic. We don't tend to have seasons anymore. It's all over the place. Although our summers are getting longer, the whole country is getting hotter. There are, in our history, Indigenous people would periodically burn. They would have their own form of burning the land, and it would regenerate, and it would be a slow burn, and the animals could escape, and it was controlled, and so there hasn't been that. There's been our way of doing, or there's been the government's way of doing it for some time, but it's not working. There is. The firefighting budget was cut. Our government was warned that this could happen some months ago, and they didn't listen. So a lot of people are angry about that. There's people are saying that mining has contributed to climate change. So how we've been treating the earth and our country in particular. So yes, there are a lot of theories, but definitely climate change, I think, is a big one. Yeah. One really lovely thing that is coming out of it is that so many people are coming together and really helping each other, and opening their hearts and their homes and their wallets, and just doing everything they can to help each other. And there are some really lovely prayers and meditations going on. Like, people are coming together on that level. People that say, "Look, oh no, I don't pray, but I was praying to God," and so it is shifting our awareness into a higher level, into that more spiritual mindset. I know a couple of different organisations, like the Brahma Kumaris, are having a beautiful global meditation on the 11th of January. I know you drive past different churches, and they have their signs up that they're praying for the firefighters, they're praying for the animals. Everyone is so that has been a lovely shift so far.
Yeah, and I'm sure that you're seeing a lot of angel stories coming out as well, because the presence there is just so magnificent, of the amount of just divine energy they're trying to help with this effort as well. So we will continue praying, and will encourage everybody listening to this podcast to continue to use this meditation and this prayer for Australia, not just now, but over the next couple of months. And we are really praying for an immense amount of rain to come in March to aid with that regrowth and that regeneration that we know Australia will have. We just want to be part of that effort as well.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. That's it means a lot. It's it's beautiful that the world has brought their focus to us and in this way.
Well, our love and our support is with you, Tony. Thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me. I love the show.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
My friends, before we leave today, just know that tomorrow, if you have time at 1:11 p.m. Central Time, we are going to be doing a prayer for Australia live on our Facebook group called the Angels and Awakening Podcast Tribe. If you are not a member of that group yet, please go over to Facebook, join that private group, and join a community of people who are just like you, who share openly about the signs that they're seeing, how they're coming into their intuition. And together tomorrow, we will collectively pray for Australia. That will be recorded over there, so if you're not able to join live, you of course can go back and listen and join in anytime you'd like. We all know that Australia can use as much love, positive energy, and prayers as it can get because, my friends, those prayers really do shift the vibration. They really do help. So all of us doing this as a collective will really send that good positive energy. In the show notes, I'm also listing a couple of resources that have been out there about if you want to donate to funds in Australia to help with this effort. You know who the top places to donate are. Again, that is in the show notes. My friends, thank you so much for being with us today. Remember to keep Australia in your hearts, thoughts, and prayers. Join us tomorrow over on the Angels and Awakening Podcast Tribe Facebook group. And remember, over the weekend, open up your heart to all of the unexpected blessings that your angels, your guides, your loved ones are trying to bring into your life right now.